Selecting the grid tool by tapping on the icon opens up the text fields and the numpad to fill up the specifications for the grid, the number of rows, columns, and the width and height of the bounding box. The grid gets made dynamically as you fill in the details. The value filled once here is the default value unless you reset it in the fields. Once the grid appears on the screen, dragging from the corners decreases the rows and columns proportionately, while dragging in the X or Y direction would increase the rows and columns respectively. Double-clicking inside resets the values to the original ones filled in the text fields. Tapping on the boundary locks the grid, allowing you to make changes to the bounding box. Any of the conventional transformations can be applied to the bounding box, such as scaling, rotating, flipping, as well as dragging. As such, the grid scale remains the same. The number of rows and columns can be modified, or the grid can be moved around to a different location on the screen. Guides appear on the screen to aid the visual process of dragging to increase the size of the bounding box. Constraining the grid proportions can be achieved by holding a finger down on the screen while dragging. This invokes snapping of the values and can be applied to the bounding box as well. Grids can be overlapped, modifying one independently of the others, allowing one to make a complex mesh of grid systems to be applied to drawings, etc. if needed be. There are the options to make isometric and axonometric grids for the purpose of 3D drawings and illustrations. These views can be selected from the main toolbar and parameters modified by entering values in the text fields as seen earlier. To apply a grid on full screen, simply touch the surface with two fingers and expand as one would do while zooming in on an image. At any point of time, the grid tool can be made inactive by tapping on the grid icon in the main toolbar. As such, the grids made previously remain on the screen while the menu and guides disappear.
Select the rectangle tool. By default, the rectangle is created from the corner. Tap on screen with another finger to create rectangle from the center. Tap and hold or tap and drag with another finger to make square. You can toggle the mode of creation from center to corner by tapping with another finger anywhere on screen. Select the polygon tool. You can change the number of sides by using handler S and radius by handler R. Double tap the handler to feed the value as demonstrated. You can rotate and change the radius by dragging the handler R. Drag the handler R and tap and hold anywhere on the screen with another finger to change the radius without causing rotation. Select the ellipse tool and start drawing ellipse. Tap and hold with another finger anywhere on screen to make circle. Tap and hold on the circle to pop up the context menu. Select the Knead tool. You can knead the object with multiple fingers. You can move the pivot of the Knead tool.
This tool arranges the order of an object in a stack. When the object and the tool are selected, a simple menu pops out near the artwork. One can choose to send the object to the back of the stack, bring it to front, or use the single triangular arrows to send backward or bring forward the object in incremental steps. Here we have replaced the layer structure with a single dock of objects. Select an object. You can look at other objects with the drop-down menu. Drag and drop to change the order. Select multiple objects. You can hide or unhide. Lock or unlock your selection. Change the opacity of your selection. Select Align, Distribute and bottom align your selection. Deselect. Select multiple objects and group them. Deselect. You can also preview all hidden objects. Similarly, you can view the locked objects and also unlock from here. Again, select the object and lock it. Select an object by tapping on it. Clicking on the fill box, a simple circular menu pops up with tint and shade gradients in the middle and colors on the outer rim. Tap on the color to fill. Tapping on the object allows you to enter customized values in RGB or CMYK formats. Tapping back on the fill box closes the menu. Tapping out on the page deselects the objects. Clicking on the palette tool reveals two types of palettes, watercolors and oil colors. Watercolor icon reveals 12 colors, simulating the real-life experience of a 12-color kit. You can select any color from the palette by tapping on it. To mix colors, you can select a second color, giving a real-time feedback of the color mixing taking place. You can save a color by just dragging your finger from the center to the outer rim of the palette. Instantly, you can see a swatch popping up to save the color. You can change the alpha and consistency of the color with a simple clockwise and anti-clockwise rotating gesture. For decreasing the alpha, we move anti-clockwise. One can save a new color swatch or overwrite an old swatch by the same dragging gesture. Double tap on the center of the palette to reset the color. For a mixed media effect, you can switch between the two modes by just going back to the palette tool. To close the Customize Color menu, drag the swatches inside the rim. Selecting the oil palette starts giving a texture to the color in the mixing palette, simulating oil colors in a painting palette. After tapping on the oil drop icon by clockwise and anti-clockwise gestures, consistency of the paint can be changed. A saved custom swatch can be deleted by pulling it out of the rim. Tap on a pre-saved swatch to use it. Unlike in the real world, transparency and consistency of a color mix can be manipulated independently in the digital world. The mixing area of the color palette has two modes, consistency mode and transparency mode, which can be toggled between. Both transparency and consistency can be increased or decreased by clockwise or anti-clockwise gestures. With a color mix of considerably reduced consistency, we can use the gyroscope of the tablet to achieve a dripping color effect. Lesser the consistency, greater will be the dripping effect.
Select Clone Stamp tool. Tap on the area to be cloned. The menu appears. The tabs SOHF denote size of the brush, opacity, hardness and flow. The current selection S is the default selection. Use the slider to increase or decrease its value. Now suppose we select opacity. Here we can use the slider again, but this time let's invoke the keypad. We can check the aligned option by tapping at the A tab. The brush type can be selected by tapping at the appropriate option. Swipe on the brush menu to view more options. Tap outside to begin cloning. Tap on the tool to deselect it.
Select the transform tool and then select the items to transform. The four icons are drag, rotate, scale and flip. The lower left icon is for dragging and positioning the selected items. The top left icon is for rotate. You can shift the central pivot to rotate the selected item in desired manner. The top right icon is for scaling the item. Use the lower right icon to flip the selected item in both horizontal and vertical axis.
On invoking the Rotate and Copy tool, a default pivot and guides appear on the screen, specifying the distance between the already present shape and the pivot. The pivot or the object can be moved by holding and dragging with a finger altering the distance between the two. Guides aid the visual modifications. Once the distance has been frozen between the pivot and the object, a single tap locks the object and guides appear on screen to specify the parameters of the circle that passes through the center of the object or the shape. The angle of rotation is decided by dragging from the object, which creates another instance of the shape at a variable angle. Once the angle of rotation is fixed, repeated taps invoke instances of the same shape at the required angle, rotating all around the pivot. By holding down one finger on the screen and tapping with the other, the objects do not rotate around their own axis while rotating around the pivot. Simply tapping the objects would also rotate around their own axis. Once the array is completed, rotating any one object would rotate all the others in the array by the same angle. Subsequent tapping would repeat the rotations of the entire set of objects by the same angle. Patterns and arrays can be created by this process. This tool allows users to save the artwork on their tablet to a folder that is synced with Adobe Illustrator. The saved files can be an image, a brush, a layer, a symbol, or a color swatch. It gives the user the option to divide workflow between the tablet and the PC.